Hi everyone! So I'm here today to talk to you about gluten-free, and the reason why is because I know there's a lot of confusion, a lot of misconceptions around gluten-free diets. Some people have used them to try and lose weight, and there's been some bad press in the media about gluten-free diets, so I just want to explain some of those things and clear up some of these misconceptions, and help you to decide whether it is something that you want to try or whether actually it's completely irrelevant to you. So part of the reason why I want to do this video is because I think a lot of people don't really understand what gluten-free diets are primarily for, and I think because they've got the word it's got the word diet in it, I think people think that it's actually a weight loss diet, which is not its intended purpose. So just to give you a little bit of background, gluten is a protein that is found in wheat, barley and rye. And if you're eating a gluten-free diet, then you'll be avoiding those foods. And the gluten-free diet was created to treat people who had celiac disease. And celiac disease is basically it's an autoimmune condition which is triggered by gluten. So essentially it's a gluten allergy. It's not quite, but that's basically what it is. So, primarily the gluten-free diet was created for people with celiac disease. But since the discovery of celiac disease, what we've also learned is that there's a very big group of people who have something called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which can be as bad, if not worse, than celiac disease, but essentially it's an intolerance to gluten or some other immune reaction to gluten. So, people who eat gluten-free are usually eating gluten-free because they have an issue digesting and tolerating gluten, and it gives them digestive symptoms, or sometimes it can be other things like psoriasis or eczema or other chronic symptoms like that. But there are some people who have gone gluten-free and found that it's helped them lose weight. So that's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit more here. So going gluten-free may help you lose weight, and there's a few reasons for that. It is a fairly restrictive way of eating. If you don't replace the gluten products that you remove, if you don't replace them properly, then it can be a fairly restrictive diet. So, that might be one reason why people end up losing weight. They might inadvertently cut down on carbohydrates through cutting out gluten. And some people might lose weight because, they might actually have a low-level sensitivity to gluten that they don't realise they have. And so when they've cut out gluten, maybe the levels of inflammation in their body has just decreased. So, inflammation is very much tied in with obesity and weight gain. So, reducing the levels of inflammation by removing foods that you're intolerant to would very plausibly help you to lose weight. So that might be another reason. But if you don't have a problem with gluten, if you definitely don't have a problem with gluten, there isn't really a reason why it would help you lose weight apart from the inadvertent cutting down of carbohydrates. So, don't do gluten-free thinking, it's a way of losing weight, because gluten-free done badly can be very unhealthy. So there are a lot of gluten-free products available. So the free from section of the supermarket is very much dedicated to gluten-free. It is also dairy-free and egg-free, but the majority of products there are focused on being gluten-free. And those free-from products are very processed. They tend to be very refined flours. They tend to be much higher sugar than their normal gluten counterparts. So for example, biscuits, if you bought like gluten-free biscuits, they are way higher in sugar than just normal standard biscuits, which are high in sugar anyway. So this is the reason why in the media, probably about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, they were talking about how people who follow a gluten-free diet are at a higher risk of diabetes. So that's why, because the gluten-free foods are so poor quality. So, to go gluten-free, you don't actually have to live off free from foods. There's lots of foods that are naturally gluten-free, like rice and potatoes and quinoa and buckwheat. There's lots of things that you can substitute your pasta and your bread. You can substitute those for other grains that are naturally gluten-free. So if you do a gluten-free diet well, then you'll eat things that are naturally gluten-free rather than things that are gluten-free products that have been heavily processed. So that's something to bear in mind, whether you have an issue with gluten or not. If you want to cut down on gluten, do it by choosing things that are naturally gluten-free, not things that are free from, or use those as treats or things to keep in the cupboard as an emergency if you run out of food or something like that. So that's the key thing that I wanted to highlight to you, really, is that the term gluten-free is not synonymous with healthy. And that's another big misconception, is that people think that if you're gluten-free then you're really healthy. I was gluten-free for a time because I suspected that I had an issue. Turns out I didn't, but everyone was sort of saying to me, oh, you're so healthy, you're gluten-free. Well, you can get gluten-free pizza, you can get gluten-free garlic bread, you can get gluten-free biscuits and, just really processed bread. And there's loads of unhealthy stuff you can get that's gluten-free. So the two things, being healthy and being gluten-free, is not necessarily synonymous with each other. So it's only healthy if you do it in the right way. So I think that pretty much covers it. So the takeaway from this is that if you think you have a problem with gluten, then by all means go gluten-free, but do your best to choose from naturally gluten-free things and try to minimise the free-from products. If you don't know whether you have an issue with gluten or not, then by all means go gluten-free for a few weeks and see how you feel. A lot of people, they might not obviously have issues with gluten, but they might have some brain fog, they might get a bit bloated, they might be struggling to lose weight, or maybe they might have some inflammation in their body like eczema or psoriasis or something like that that they're really struggling to get under control. An underlying intolerance like gluten sensitivity could be to blame. So by all means trialing a gluten-free diet can be very interesting, but it's worth bearing in mind that if you are sensitive to gluten, then you do have to give it a little bit of time to really establish whether going gluten-free is going to help you. But also, if you have skin symptoms like eczema and psoriasis, they can take a fair bit longer to sort of completely go away, but they should calm down relatively quickly, so maybe within a couple of weeks. The other key thing to note is that if you are sensitive to gluten and then you cut out gluten and maybe you get a bit of an improvement but not a full improvement of your symptoms, then it could be because the gluten has done some damage to your gut lining and maybe caused some imbalance in the gut bacteria or something like that. And so you might need to do some gut healing. And that's kind of a topic for another day. There's loads of stuff on my website about the gut and healing. So, if you want more information about that, then have a look through there. So I hope that's been interesting for you guys. Any questions, let me know. And if I think of anything I've missed, I'll just pop it in the comments afterwards. Good to see you. Bye-bye.